Today, we have the amazing Amanda Nowak, who is a serial entrepreneur and experienced extreme burnout while building a seven-figure decor business. After making some major changes, she was able to decrease her 70-plus hour work weeks to 20, increase profits, and create a life that aligned with her values. Amanda now empowers women to find the space in their lives and businesses to take care of themselves and design fulfilling lives. We talk about how she experienced burnout, signs of burnout, how to overcome burnout, and also the importance of self-care. Please enjoy today's episode. Welcome back to this season of The Climb, a journey where listening to your heart reveals your true potential. With the Intermountain philosophy, on this show, we're here to teach you how to embrace the limitless nature of growth.
Women are reshaping the world, driven by their dreams. Our mission is to empower you to listen to your heart, pursue those dreams, to create a community where women like you can begin the climb to true success together.
Hello, and welcome to this week's Climb with the amazing Amanda Nowak. It's been a few months since we spoke, actually, and I was thinking about it because I was just wrapping up season one, and afterwards, I was like, I have to have her on the season two. Like, I don't remember even exactly what it was about our conversation, but I knew that this had to happen. So I'm so grateful you're here today. Welcome, Amanda.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, yeah. So you've built and exited a business, and since then have started another one. And I know that burnout is central to both of these experiences and what you're doing today. But before we dive into that, I would love to hear your backstory and learn a little bit more about who is Amanda.
Sure. I'll give you the short version because it's a long 42 years. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. So my grandparents bought a restaurant back in the 60s that stayed in my family until 2021. So everything was kind of always centered around it. We had Christmas there, holidays. If somebody was late coming home from work, you went to the restaurant to wait to get picked up. And then my mom was also an artist and had a gift shop growing up. But then I went to college and thought I would be a corporate interior designer and, get a 401k and all those good things. So I did that for 5 years for Brookdale Senior Living, which at the time was the biggest senior living company in the country. I'm not sure if it still is, but I traveled all over renovating buildings. And of course, in the meantime, met my now husband who was in finance. They have that TikTok song, it's like looking for a guy in finance, 6'5", blue eyes. He had all of that except for the trust fund, which now we're like would have come in really handy as entrepreneurs. But he started a catering business on the side. And so come 2012, it had started taking off. And I was kind of done with traveling every week and going all over the place. So we decided I was going to leave my job to help him with catering business. But then also, I wanted to keep one foot in the design world at that point. And I really loved doing the end parts of our project. So I loved the accessories, like doing all the shopping and finding all the finishing touches. So I went to my boss. I said, I have to leave, but I would love to source the accessories for you guys. And she said, yes. So that was the start of The Simple Home in 2012. So then I started it in this very house in the bedroom next door.
Nice.
And then I grew it to, pretty big. 2021, I think, was like the peak where I had a big warehouse and a team of 8 employees, and we had these huge clients. And I always say, like, it looked great on paper, right? And it just got to this point where I was just burnt out and I was exhausted. And so we went on vacation in April of 2021. It was like the first time since COVID we like ventured out into the world. And the first night of this vacation that was supposed to relax us both, I had an absolute meltdown at dinner. And I looked at my husband. I just said, I can't do this anymore. I just want to shut it down. I want to walk away and never go back into that building again as long as I live. And because, of course, we keep everything inside forever. Like, he knew I was busy and overwhelmed because that's what comes with having a business. But I don't think he knew I was to that point of just being like, shut it down. I'm done. And he's so wonderful and supportive. He said, whatever you need to do, I'm here, but maybe you want to think about this a little bit more and just make sure that like this is the decision you want to make, that you don't want to change things. So then I ended up going back and I had 2 coaches I was working with. So we restructured the entire business. And so we made it so I wasn't the bottleneck. I delegated things. We changed how we worked with clients. So it wasn't so convoluted. It was much easier. We had to let go of a big client. But then it came to a point where I didn't have to work so much. And it was really lovely. And so then going into 2023, I was in this really great place where the business could kind of run without me. And I had one of my old coaches ask me to do some coaching on the side in the form of some workshops.
Mhm.
And so did that and I really loved it. And so then I thought, well, maybe I'll do coaching and run this decor business side by side. But last summer, it was like the universe was speaking to me in 100 different ways. It's time for you to be done with this, and it's time to just shut it down. And I kind of realized the only reason I was keeping the decor business going was because I didn't want to let people down, like my clients or my team. So I came to terms with that and I shut it down last August. Part of the business I passed on to another company who continues to run it. The rest I just shut down. I took 2.5 months off, which was like the first time I'd taken that much time off since before I started working when I was 13. And it was hard, but it was lovely. And then I started Element 8 in November. So going back to that, helping the women who were going through the same thing I was and hopefully catching them before they hit that like crispy burnout where they want to just like burn everything to the ground and be done. And yeah, it has been quite the ride.
It sounds like it. And I love it too, because I feel like oftentimes we end up teaching or doing some sort of job of something that we needed ourselves, right? So you're going through it yourself and now you've found a program to help people that were going through it as well, right? So that's really amazing that you've come around full circle here. Going back to when you said, at that dinner when you had your meltdown, outside of exhaustion, like how did you know that you were experiencing burnout? Like what were the signs? What were you feeling? Like what was that moment?
I mean, there was so much. There was a like I didn't want to go to work anymore. I dreaded getting out of bed and going there because I just thought, what fresh hell is waiting for me there today?
I don't know.
Because in 2021 too, 2020 was its own beast, but 2021 it was like the fire hose got turned back on, and so it just felt like it was overwhelming every day. And so, yeah, there was the overwhelm, the exhaustion. I couldn't turn my brain off. It was like I would wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and be sitting there wide eyed in bed going, I know I have to do this, this, and this tomorrow. And I'd pick up my phone and I would type it in there. It was, I mean, it just felt like I couldn't keep my head above water no matter how hard I tried. And every time I thought I could get like a sip of air, something else pulled me back down.
Mm.
And so it was the only way I could describe it is just awful. And I hope I never have to experience it again.
Yeah, that's hard. And how did you recognize then? Obviously, you spoke with your husband, but was there like you mentioned that were you already working with two coaches, or did you seek them out? Like, how did that come about? Because I know like that's so important too to get that external perspective, right?
Yeah. So I was already working with both of them. One of them actually, we had started talking in 2020. She had an agency and I hired her to do my social media. But then in a conversation, she'd asked me, like, well, what do you actually want? And I said, well, I know I don't want to be in this business forever. So I probably want to exit. So we were working together talking about exit planning, but knowing that it was probably 2 or 3 years in the future
I see.
because to get a valuation to where I wanted it to get it and to have things where I could remove myself was a long ways off. And to be honest, that probably added to my burnout because I was trying to do that on top of running the business. And my other coach was from an accelerator I had been a part of. And he kind of helped me with a lot of the structural things with my business. So they didn't know I was burnt out because I was so good at masking and not letting anybody know that anything was wrong. Because it was kind of like that meme with the little dog with the fire behind it being like, this is fine.
Yeah.
Everything is fine. I'm fine.
Why do you think you were doing that? Like, was it like to prove to yourself, to prove to other people? Like, what was, I know you come from a family of entrepreneurs as well. Was it something that like was firing, like there was that fire lit in that sense, or what was it, do you think?
Oh God, so many things. Yes, my family. My family is very much like the little red hen, like I'll just do it myself and I don't need anybody to help me. I'll just figure it out. I think there's also a weird societal expectation when you own a business where it's like, well, this is what you asked for and it's hard. So just figure it out.
Right.
And so I kind of, and I talk about this with my clients a lot. There's almost like a shame around it where when you have this quote unquote successful business and you decide that you don't like it or you don't want to do it anymore, it's like, well, how dare you? Like you have this thing that people want and you just don't want to do it anymore. Like that's
Right.
awful. So, and it just seems like they're especially, I feel like the hustle or culture around entrepreneurship has changed quite a bit since I started this business or my last business. But it just seemed like it was this expectation. Like you just go, and then someday you exit, and then you can sit on a beach, like you can sleep when you're dead, that kind of mentality.
Yeah, right. So when you did decide to like pivot and delegate and, make these changes and kind of remove yourself a little bit from being the bottleneck, all the stuff you were talking about, what was that like for you emotionally? Like that must have been a huge like I can't even imagine. Yeah. Because also
It's
10
so
years, almost
hard.
10 years. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, because I think I was at year 9, and, I remember having another coach that I had fired a long time ago who would just tell me things like, "Well, just work less. Like, just delegate things." And I remember thinking he was not an entrepreneur, and I remember thinking, "You have no idea what this is like." And the thought of delegating is like, okay, well, also I have to set time to teach somebody how to do that or make a process. Like, there's all these other steps that come with it. And so it all felt so daunting until I had no other choice because I knew I couldn't keep going the way I was. So the way I did it is when I came back from that vacation, I said, we're doing a 4-day work week because I knew that if I had one day by myself, I could get to the things I needed to get to because for one sweet, sweet day, nobody could bother me. And that was employees, clients. I just had to set that boundary in place. So that's what I did. I worked the 4 days with everybody, took that one day. And yeah, in the beginning, it was super hard. But then it just kind of became okay, this is my time to work on the things I need to do to get ahead. And then, bit by bit, I got to a place where I could finally see things improving. Because in the beginning, you do all these things and it's still the same. It's still super
Right.
hard. You're still exhausted. But at some point, like the tide starts to turn, and you're like, okay, I'm seeing the momentum, like it's happening. This is all gonna work out.
Well, and I'm sure it also changed your energy entirely, right? Like once you started to be able to see from afar as well, like that motivated you probably a little bit more to kind of stick with it at least, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I finally was getting rest. Like for
Oh, yeah.
so long, it was just because I would take those Fridays, like sometimes I'd take a nap in the afternoon, which felt so hard to do. And I felt so guilty doing it. But when I did it, I saw the results of, okay, well, I took this 15-minute nap and now I can actually crank out the rest of the stuff I need to do for the rest of the afternoon. Whereas before, I would just kept going and going and going until 11 o'clock at night and then be like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to collapse into bed and wake up again in 4 hours and think of something else I forgot to do.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty vicious cycle. So now on to element 8. Tell us more about what it is that you do and how you work with clients.
Yeah. So I work with women who I hope to catch them before they get to the spot I was
Yeah.
in, but they're in a space where they know that this isn't what they want anymore, whether that's they want to change their business or they want to pivot to something completely different. So I do a lot of one on one coaching where we kind of lay everything out. We figure out like, what are your values? What do you actually want? Which is something a lot of people don't figure out when they start a business. They just do the business because it's the thing they're good at. But there's no goalpost that's like, this is what I want and this is what I'm shooting for. The goalpost keeps moving if you don't know that.
Yeah.
And then you get burnt out and really stressed out. So we kind of figure out those things in the beginning. And then, I've had people go both ways. Some get reinvigorated in their business and get super excited about it because now we can bring them back to doing the thing that they started the business for. And others are kind of how I ended up where they're done. Like it was a phase in their life that they really loved and now it's time to move on to something else. And so part of that too, sometimes is figuring out what is the next thing and how, do you take a break? Do you go right into something else? Do you go back to a 9 to 5 job? It all depends on, again, like what their values are, what they want, and what that end product should be for them.
Oh, that makes sense. So, I bet you more than one of our audience listeners right now are probably experiencing burnout, but what typically are the signs of burnout, or what have you seen normally? And like where, when you said that you want to catch them before they get to that point, like how do you know what that is? Like that like middle ground almost, right?
Yeah, I think the middle ground is they're just super overwhelmed and they're losing passion for their business. Like it's like I kind of said before, like it's not fun anymore. It's just this job that they created for themselves that they now hate. And
Yeah.
it's the not feeling like they can keep their head above water. They don't know how they're going to catch up. I call it like the hamster wheel of death, where
Oh
you
no.
don't know how you're going to get off because it just
Yeah.
feels like there's no end to it. So, I mean, overwhelm is probably like the best way to describe it. Cause I think to your point, burnout is tough because people are like, what is burnout? Like, when do I actually get to burnout? And
Right.
whereas mine was like a very clear, I had a meltdown at dinner. Like, but if
There
we're
was a
being
moment, but yeah.
honest, yeah. But if we're being honest, it probably was rearing its head for the 3 months prior to that, if not longer. So like my goal is just to get people, women living lives that they love and like a life that they don't have to take a vacation from, where they, it's not going to be, I said this yesterday to somebody, I'm like, it's not going to be rainbows and hearts every moment of every day. But if you can do things that you love every week and even in small increments, it's way better than working so hard to wearing yourself out for 1 week out of the year where you go and do nothing and lay on a beach. So I just try to get it so they're passionate about their lives and they're fulfilled and they're doing something that they really enjoy.
Oh, that's amazing. So, we talk a lot about listening and talking to your heart. I feel like a lot of times, like that hustle culture that we have has forced us to kind of live up top instead of talking to our heart and like paying attention to what we actually need. Is that something that you like? Was it at that dinner that you realized like I've been ignoring my feelings here and I need to pay attention to that, or like what was that like for you?
I think because it went out so explosively. And then I had this moment of like, oh, this is happening. Now I kind of know the signs because, us leopards, we don't change our spots. Like we're still perfectionists and we still have that drive to do things. And so I'll catch myself every once in a while where I'll like pull my laptop out to do something like order a pair of shoes or something. And then I check my email and then I realize I've been in there for an hour and I have to immediately be like, shut the laptop. I'm not doing this. So it's just kind of being more conscious of our actions. There's some things that I've done in this process. Like I started meditating every morning. It's not some crazy 2 hour meditation. Like sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 20 minutes. That's kind of helped me like tune into my body more and listen to like what's going on and what I need. I journal a lot more now. There's a book, what is it called? The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And so one of the things they tell you to do every morning is morning pages. So you write 3 pages. It doesn't have to be like Dear Diary. It can just be getting all the thoughts out of your head for 3 pages. That's helped because sometimes there's things that'll come up in there that I'll go, oh, I didn't even realize that this thing was bothering me. So having kind of those two avenues to see a little bit deeper inside myself has been really helpful and kind of keeps me from going in that direction again.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You pretty much asked it. I always love to ask my guests, what is a non-negotiable self-care routine that you've incorporated into your life? And it sounds like those are the two things that you've like made just necessary. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say I do not do them every day, but I try.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's
that's good.
but they're there. They're there.
Yeah. I mean, it's one I used to meditate daily as well, and I've been really bad about it. And it's one of those things like I know self-care is so important. And yet sometimes it does get put on the back burner. And it's so silly because like in order to be the best version of ourselves, right? Like we do have to take care of ourselves. So that's hard
Yeah.
to do sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
and I think a non-negotiable that I actually have is I go to physical therapy every month,
Okay.
which I started doing it 10 years ago because I had a knee injury that flared back up. But now that's been something I go every month because they just like check out my whole body and make sure that I'm not like unbalanced or there's not something that's stuck or out of alignment because I want to be able to still travel with my husband in 30, 40 years. And so that's like my self care of I'm keeping myself in a place where hopefully I'm still mobile in the years to come. And
Yeah.
then, I won't get more injuries so that I can't do the things I want to do.
Yeah. That's a really good point, actually. I've got bad knees myself, so I should probably look at you for doing something like that. Yeah, because I like, for example, I used to love skiing, but I just can't even do that now. More so because I worry if I do it, injure myself again, then it's just gonna be so much worse. So I try and cut that out. But
Yeah.
yeah, I wanna make sure I can travel in the future as well. I'd love to talk back to you mentioned boundaries that you had set at well, you're at your first company. So what was that like, and how does boundaries and setting boundaries connect to burnout?
Boundaries are tough for I think for everyone. But the thing with the boundaries, like you can say you have a boundary, but you have to actually uphold it. And that is the hard part. So, for example, when we did the 4-day work week, we told all of our clients 4-day work week, but people would still email us on Friday. It was really hard sometimes to be like, I know it's just a little email that I could just send a one-word answer, but I would have to be really hard on myself and be like, you cannot do it because it's like you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So, and then you have now breached that boundary and you have to start all over again. So, there was a lot of it with that with employees, how I communicated. We had boundaries around, no emails on those Fridays unless it was an emergency, no emails or contact outside of business hours. Because I wanted to make sure everybody was actually going home and resting, including myself. And with my clients, I think it's a lot of that. Like we start these businesses and we have these employees who we love and we just kind of go, okay, yeah, you can come into my office whenever you need something and shoot me a text. And a lot of the boundaries I set is kind of, we talk about the important, like the order of importance. So if it's an emergency, it's a phone call. If it's something that can, be dealt with in a short amount of time, it's a text. If it's something that can be dealt with days from now, it's an email. And if they need to come into your office and it's not an emergency, they need to set up a time on your calendar.
Yeah, that's interesting. It is tough, like having there's something to be said about setting the boundaries and actually committing to them and respecting those boundaries. There's a huge difference because you can talk about it all you want, but actually following through with it is the hard part. And I can imagine if you don't follow through with it, like they're set there in on purpose so that you avoid those types of burnout situations, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's tough because I mean, the first time somebody tries it, you're like, I mean, just this one time would be fine. But that's like the enemy of
Right.
boundaries is just that one time. So it's really just being very stringent with it. And again, it's like in the end, you realize that it's so much better because then I thought, nope, I had total freedom after work hours and on the weekends and on those Fridays. So once you start to see the payoff, then you're like, this was a good
Yeah. That's too funny. So I saw recently too on LinkedIn, you posted something about having hard conversations and to not avoid those. I'd love to hear more about the backstory around that, and then just diving into like how to go about having those hard conversations.
Yeah. So I grew up in a household where we didn't like talking about hard things was like, no, like very, grew up very conflict avoidant and it was always Switzerland. Like even when I had roommates, like I would be the one that would be like, hey guys, maybe we can figure this out. And so being a boss is tough because you have to fire people. You have to have the hard conversations of are you the right fit, even with clients. But it's really just, it's so much easier on the other side of those hard conversations. I think the quote I put out there, it's like, you can have a hard conversation or you can have a hard life. And
Yeah.
it's so true. It's like we just have to like rip the band-aid off to have that hard conversation because on the other side of it, like everything works out. Like I think back to we had this really big client. I loved them. They gave us a ton of revenue, but when we actually dug in, we weren't making any money off of them because of the way they were so massive in the way they did business. Like it was just tough for us to make it work. And so having that conversation of, hi, we love you, but we can't work with you anymore, that was terrifying. Like I, of course, like I don't want them to be mad at me. And then also, a whole revenue stream was going away. But it was so great because they totally understood when, I explained it. And then, we ended our relationship, but 3 other people popped into their place that were more aligned with us. So it's so tough and, you get the stomach butterflies and all the things, but once it's done, it's done. And then you can move on and everything is just so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Once one door closes, several more open, right?
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure.
So what is it? I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but now, you're helping people not do what you went through. What's the most rewarding aspect of like your work these days? Like when you are working with clients, like what do you love so much about it?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love when they text me or they email me and they'll tell me something that like they learned in one of our sessions and it like went really well. Or like I have one client right now, we've been working together since last year and she's actually exiting her business.
Oh,
And
nice.
so like she sent me a text the other day, like they signed a letter of intent. And so it's just so awesome seeing these women go from this place of I hate it and I'm so miserable to like jumping into this new endeavors and new exciting things for them. And it's just nice seeing them not so stuck anymore. Just like their energy changes. And I just love, like, my whole thing is like, I just want women to live fun and fulfilling lives. And I want them to have joy. Like I said, have these lives that they don't have to take a vacation from, where it's that good. And so that has just been really cool seeing like the trajectory of these women and the cool things that they're doing now. And, and some of them are still in the same businesses, but they like what they're doing again because they realize they gave the fun jobs to their employees. And so, we just had to kind of shake things up so that they could do like the fun creative things that they wanted to do. So it's just great. I just like seeing
Yeah.
people happy.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing. So for somebody who is experiencing overwhelm right now, what would be some initial steps that they could take to just like kind of take that step back and get out of it?
Yeah. I think the initial step is just creating space for yourself because I know everybody, especially when you're burnt out, you typically are kind of what I said before, like you're a perfectionist, you're driven. You're just like, okay, well, I want to not be burnt out now. So now I'm going to do this, 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 and this. I'm going to do it all at once. It's going to be great. And I'm going to be good in 3 weeks. And that's not how it works. So the first step is always just taking time, whether that's time to, meditate in the morning to just kind of, get back to yourself. If it's time to go on a walk, do something for yourself that kind of like calms you down. And then it's taking a little bit more time to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to change this? So, do I need to add an employee? Do I need to delegate things? There's a whole list of things where we go from there, but really it's just starting to chunk out that time to make time for yourself and time to change your business. And that is the hardest part because when you're so busy, you just think there's no way that there's time in my day to do this, but you have to make it work.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. Well, this has been so wonderful. What is the best way to connect with you, Amanda?
Sure. You can send me an email at Amanda at element the number 8.com. You can find me on Instagram at element.8 spelled out .coaching, or you can find me on my website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having us. This is so like important to be talking and being aware about burnout. So I appreciate you telling us the ins and outs of your story and how you help people today.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. This was great.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of The Climb. Not ready for your journey to end? Make sure to join our online community and subscribe to our YouTube channel to discover your true spirit, strength, and potential today. Details in the show notes below. Need a guide for your journey? Check out our founder, Diane Wong's new book, The Inner Mountain.
Until next time, remember, You're an experiment. Focus on your own path and continue to climb your inner mountain. Thank you.